I feel pretty confident in saying that even if David Ayer gets to release an Ayer cut of the first Suicide Squad movie, it's not going to be as good as this, or at least not as much fun. The Suicide Squad. People have been asking me for a couple days now. I actually saw it Friday night, but this was a weekend that I spent with Liz, so I wasn't home to shoot a review. We went to a drive-in movie theater and saw it there. This is a lot of fun. This is a good... This is basically exactly what I was hoping for going into it. Based off the participation of James Gunn as writer-director, based off the trailers, this was what I wanted. This is ridiculous. This is darkly hilarious. This is raucous. This is absurd, and it knows it's absurd. And it's just really well done. I don't want to oversell it. I think it's an easy thing to do with a movie like this, to overpraise it, because its ambitions aren't actually that high. It's just trying to be an R-rated good time. That's all it's aiming to be, and that's exactly what it is. I would not put it on par with the Guardians of the Galaxy movies, simply because those have a little bit more emotional resonance to them than this does. That's not to say this is completely absent emotional moments or content. They are there, but they're not the central focus the way certainly something like Guardians of the Galaxy Volume 2 had going on. So there's part of me that kind of wonders if Gunn gets better with a certain amount of restraint put on him, because this is certainly very much in keeping with something like Slither, which he made ages ago. But I kind of feel like when he's allowed to just go nuts and do pretty much whatever he wants, the kind of things that Disney or Marvel would not let him do in terms of, violence, language, etc., I think he's actually a little bit better sort of working within certain confines, because I think it brings out other aspects of him as a creator, like the emotional resonances, that aren't as front and center when he's allowed to just do whatever. And he's not the only person who I think this is about. I think a lot of artists actually work better with a certain amount of constraints on them, because it can help them focus. Now, obviously, sometimes filmmakers get restraints put on them that ruin their creative process or the end result, but sometimes they actually help, and I kind of think that with him. And I just want to say that so that people don't come into this expecting more than this is ever going to deliver. This is just fun, absurd, violent, enjoyable time at the movies. I'm trying to think how spoilery I want to get with this, because honestly, talking too much about it all gets to some degree of spoilers. What I will say, this shouldn't be a shock, but this does actually do a lot more to live up to the title, Suicide Squad, than the previous one did. And if you had noticed in even the early teaser trailer, how many characters are getting brought in, a lot of them don't make it. So you should have expected that just by law of averages and the sheer number of characters. Like, there's no way all these people are going to make it through. But in terms of, and like, for me to even say which characters I really liked kind of already gives the game away as to who makes it at least farther into the movie, if not to the end of the movie. So, from here on, I am going to take the restraints off myself and free myself up to talk about the whole thing. I don't intend this to be excessively spoilery, but I am going to be talking about things that are probably going to indicate to you some of the characters who live, some of the characters who die, etc., etc. So, understanding that, if you want to see it, go see it. It's in theaters. It's on HBO Max. It's not hard to see. So, if you're still here, I'm assuming you already have, or you don't care about spoilers. Honestly, the only kill that surprised me in the front end, because the opening is where we get a lot of dead characters, and like a bunch of these I knew were gonna die. I knew that Blackguard was gonna die. I knew Javelin was gonna die. I knew Savant was gonna die, and that was partially gut instinct, but also like just seeing how few scenes they appeared in the trailers, whereas characters like Nanaue, aka King Shark, or Ratcatcher 2, or Bloodsport, or Harley, or the Polka Dot Man, you could just see more scenes that they appeared in just in the trailer. So you know they're going to make it at least a little longer, whereas The other guys I mentioned, TDK, the detachable kid, my God. You were only seeing them in like one or two scenes. Like you saw them in the prison, you saw them on the beach, maybe you saw them inside the helicopter. That was it. You didn't see them anywhere else. Or, the big sort of everybody walks in front of I think it was the American flag shot, but like very limited scenes. So it wasn't hard for me to parse who was going to die. I did expect Weasel to last longer than he did, although fair's fair. He does come to at the end, which was kind of funny. But him going first, for all intents and purposes, was actually really funny. One of the aspects I really like about this versus the previous Suicide Squad, and this is like more substantive than just liking Gunn's approach better. So like the fact that Weasel drowns and, Rick Flags only comes, did anyone check to see if the Weasel can swim? And all these people, in the room, the people, on the keyboards, and they're looking at each other like, huh? And so I like that element being brought into it, because that was something that the first film lacked. This sense of, Waller watching them, not just in I have my eyes on you way, but in like, this is their theoretical support team. With the way that like they were taking bets on who was going to live or who's going to die, and then later on sort of getting uncomfortable with the idea of Waller just popping those who remain simply out of spite when they're actually trying to do a good thing. If I was going to make a complaint on that, I'm not loving that Waller is as flat out villainous as she has been in this series in general, and in this one in particular. Like, look, Waller's not a nice person, but she's not cruel for its own sake. And she's usually not driven by spite. I'm not saying she's incapable of it, but she's a very calculated character. If she has leverage, she wants to maintain it. She's not going to throw that away out of anger unless something really pushes her buttons. And she's a little too volatile for my taste in this, and just a little too flatly the bad guy. And as someone who was a big fan of Amanda Waller as a character, it frustrates me a bit. I feel like it undersells part of what makes her really interesting. That's one of the few actual criticisms I've got on the thing. But overall, I liked that whole element being way more integrated into this. In terms of character highlights, I did like Polka Dot Man. I liked him, and I feel like the doses we got of him were just enough. I thought he'd make it to the end, although that said, the instant the shot started where he gets splatted by Starro, I knew that was going to happen. Just from the framing of the shot, I'm like, oh, he's so dead. Ratcatcher 2. I liked her a lot. She was good. Harley was interestingly used. And there's this whole divergence in the middle where she's being taken on a date and being seduced by the dictator on this island. And I'm like, where are we going with this? And it caps off perfectly. It's one of those scenes that do we really need this? And then the way it ends, I'm like, yes, we did. Because I love the idea that he hears this guy say, I will imprison all my enemies and their wives and their children. And she just shoots him. And she goes to this explanation of I'm really sorry, but I said that if I ever saw a red flag again, I'd do the right thing and I'd kill my boyfriend. I'm like, yeah. So I think it's perfect that she did that. And I love that she actually made the situation worse. She did what in her mind makes the most sense to do, and is definitely what she should have done. And you can't even argue that she was necessarily wrong to do it, but she still made the situation worse. I mean, that's Harley in a nutshell, and I do love that. I like Peter Capaldi as the Thinker, but I mean, I'm going to be biased. He's my favorite Doctor. The use of Starro, that was actually pretty impressive because, look, Starro is absurd. He's a Silver Age holdover. He is a space starfish with mind control powers. And I'm really impressed that this film was able to make that threatening, make that dangerous, while never losing sight of the fact that this is flatly absurd. And that's that's a really good balance to strike if you can do it. And it's not easy. Because it's if you acknowledge the absurdity of something, especially something that's meant to be a threat, you can take the danger out of it. But they brought enough horrific aspects to the people being controlled, or like the one time in the lab where we see, one of the starfish being taken off and like what is left behind, this mangled face. You're like, okay. Like there's definitely legitimately horrific aspects of this, but he's also a really bright and really colorful starfish stomping through a city, and that's ridiculous. And it finds that, it's a fine line to walk, but this walks it really well. King Shark, Nanaue, he was great. I figured I was gonna like him, but he was lovable. I just love little moments like they're all checking in on the comms, and he's just like, bird. Nanaue, stay off the comms. I was surprised Rick Flag died. That one kind of caught me off guard because it happens way later. I think the deaths that happen later were, I'm not going to say completely unexpected, but certainly once we did the massive clearing, the only death that surprised me at the front end was Captain Boomerang. I was surprised they brought him back just to kill him, although in hindsight, I should have paid attention to the fact that he appeared in so few of the trailers, and I would have clocked him the same as everybody else, but I just assumed they brought him back, they'll keep him around. No. Oh, okay then. But then Flag going out. Peacemaker was well done. I am going to be curious to see what this prequel series with him is going to be like. John Cena was really good for this part, for this guy who is just basically, he will justify any horrible thing in the name of peace and liberty for the sake of the nation. Like, oh God, you are the worst kind of self-righteous monster. And he managed to be that and also be fun. So again, like finding a really good balance. Idris Elba's really good at just like being done with everything. Ugh. He's got that down pat, and he brings it here. And that's another really wonderful element to it. The whole thing, it's just fun. It is ridiculous, self-aware, absurd, bloody fun. And if that is your bag, I hope you had fun with it. The Suicide Squad, what did you think? Whatever your thoughts are, drop something down in the comments. Let's talk about it. Like, share, subscribe, all help me out. I also have a Patreon if you really want to give me a boost. But no pressure on any of that. Take a relaxed attitude around here so you can just come on back next time you need a break.